Hmm. So today we're in the final version, the final chapter of our discourse about why. Hashtag a very difficult story. The hashtag was supposed to be why, forgive me, but when I put why, it led to videos that had nothing to do with what I was saying because why is such a popular search item. So I had to change it and make it a very difficult story. And thankfully, because I later on saw that there was a very difficult truth. So if I had tried to do it like that, it would have led to a different set of things again. So I have to manage that hashtag. A difficult story. That's the hashtag. But the actual title is supposed to be why. So now the final step in the equation. Yesterday I discussed how Jesus is not God because of the illusion of the cross. Now I'm going to give the not the final. There is infinite evidence for it, but the other side of the story, the other major proof of how he is not the one, how they do not qualify. So Abraham's promise. Abraham was promised many nations, but in Genesis 15:13, I think 13 to 14. I used to say 12 before. I checked it was 15. So forgive me. I think it's 15:13 to 14. God told him that know of a surety, that is of a guaranteed. There is no two ways about it. There is no going around it. There's no other version. There is of a guarantee. Your children shall be slaves in a strange land. After 400 years, they shall be set free. I think we have discussed that in many videos. When I talk about the significance of the 400-year slavery, Israel's 400 years. I think the title on the thumbnail is 400 years a slave. You can check it if you want to find out more about that. But they're supposed to be slaves for 400 years, and then after that they will come out with great spoil. But it says no of a surety. This will be the nature. This will be the circumstances that your descendants will have to endure. So if you come into Abraham's life himself, if you start from his own life, from his own children, you see, and that's where the problem begins. Isaac was never exiled. Isaac grew up in the house, he stayed in the house, never went anywhere. He inherited from his father. Meanwhile, Ishmael, and the Ishmael, remember, if you read the Bible properly, Ishmael had 7 other brothers. Ishmael was the son of Hagar. He was driven away. That was very popular. But after Sarah died, if you read Genesis 25, Abraham married a second wife. And take note of that word wife, not a concubine. Married another wife. Her name was Keturah. I think this bishop, he had very, very great insight. Otabu Mensah, he spoke a lot about, I think, Enoch the Ethiopian or something. He knows a lot about that Abraham's Ethiopic line. I think you can Google him and see some things about it. I've not really read it, but I know he was a very insightful guy. So if he documented anything about that, it may be worth the read if you're interested. But for now, basically, Abraham had this wife with this woman, Keturah, and she gave birth to 6 sons for him. So apart from Jesus, Abraham had 7 other boys, 7 sons, 7 nations. I remember he was promised many nations. You better start taking these things into account and stop deceiving yourself. Abraham was promised many nations. Isaac is saying is the only son. Abraham was never supposed to have only one son. He was supposed to have many sons, many nations. So on his own, Abraham had already produced 7 sons, which spiritually, like I've said before, signifies infinite. Signifies rest. There's nothing more to do. You cannot have any more than this. Everything you could ever possibly need is already there. So he had these 7 sons on his own. Isaac is supposed to be the fulfillment of the promise. It's supposed to help him get the 7 sons, the many nations. But on his own, he already had the 7 sons. And then, funny enough, because of Isaac, he had to send them away. So if you look at it from the fundamental from here, if you really look at it before we even go far, Isaac claims to be the fulfillment of the promise, but it's actually hindering the promise because the promise was many nations, many sons, many children. And because of him, they are instead driving away the many children and retaining the one. He didn't make it 0 children because it would be too obvious that the promise had not come to pass. So he made it 1. I tell you that the devil is the illusion of the promise, it's the illusion of the thing, it's not the opposite of the thing. So he made it only 1. And if you want to start talking about a nation, China has 2 billion people, but it is still only 1 nation. Nation is the ideology, is the people, is people gathered under a certain rule or law or whatever people is in nation. I don't know. I will explain how a nation is actually formed in another video. But for now, a nation, no matter how many people are inside, is still one nation. So to have many nations, you need to have many nations. So Israel having many people inside doesn't make it many nations. It is still one nation. And even that one nation was not really produced by Isaac. You will see why as we go along. So these 7 children are driven away. Mind you, Ishmael on his own produced 12 nations. If you can read it. I will check. I can't remember. I'm not sure if it was in the Genesis 25. Where it might be, but I will check. I can't be sure. I'll write it down later in the edits. Ishmael gave birth to 12 nations. Those boys between themselves, those 6 boys between themselves, gave birth to 16 nations. So without Isaac's help, Abraham gave birth to 7 sons and ended up with 28 nations, all on his own, that he had to discard and abandon and pretend he didn't have because of this one boy, this one nation that claims to be the fulfillment of the promise. Meanwhile, the promise was many nations. Fulfillment of the promise is hindering the many and is sustaining the one, is upholding the one, is insisting upon the one. So basically, we can already see that Isaac, that's supposed to be the promise, which is the type of Jesus. That's why I told Jesus is the illusion. It's supposed to be typology of Jesus, the son that was sacrificed. It's actually hindering the promise. The same way Jesus says he's the only one and he's supposed to be the only righteous one. They're supposed to be all have the nature of God. That is the actual righteousness. No, Jesus does not even have actual righteousness, if you really check it. But I'm not going to that. If you really check it, he has claimed righteousness. That's why he can only give you what he has. You say a good tree cannot produce corrupt fruit, and a bad tree cannot produce good fruit. If he had actual righteousness, he would be able to give you actual righteousness. But because his own righteousness too is by faith, is by grace, is by claims. That's why he also has claimed righteousness to give you. That's why when you check it, even the cross, he was not the one that died on the cross. If you question about that issue of the cross and say, but he was there physically, have you ever been in a state where you are overwhelmed, just like we said Noah was overwhelmed by the Spirit, where you're overwhelmed by the Spirit and you don't remember what you did in that time? That's what happened with Jesus. When the cross is symbolic of the suffering. So the person that carried the cross is one that symbolizes who actually suffered. So just like the ram actually came and took him away completely, but because of the illusion, God needed to plant the illusion. God allowed him to still be there so he could take the claim. But spiritually, God's Spirit himself came and took over that thing. Jesus didn't remember what happened during those 12 hours. And even the suffering of the cross is not 12 hours. It's actually supposed to be 12 years. Just like Joseph served 12 years in prison and 1 year in Potiphar's house. If you read the book of Joshua, it is there. It's a 12-year suffering. He came and limited you to 12 hours. Who cannot suffer for 12 hours? Who cannot suffer for 12 hours? What the hell is 12 hours? Do you know it's 12 hours? So to have enough opportunity to back out and say I'm not doing it again. The kind of suffering is supposed to be long and slow and painful and shameful and tedious and inexplicable. You cannot explain why you are going through what you are going to anybody. It's supposed to be 12 years. Come and do 12 hours and entertain people and deceive themselves. That they even have to do for him. But so the issue of the many nations. And then the issue of the exile. We have addressed the many nations. Abraham was supposed to have many nations. Isaac limited it to one. The issue of the exile. You can see, and why they needed to be exiled. You see, God did not receive his power from anybody. God is the source. So for you to be a child of God, for you to have God's DNA, it means you cannot receive that power from anybody. You have to make it on your own. So the very act of you receiving it, the act of you inheriting it from him, means you do not have his nature. You may have his money, but you do not have his nature. Because if you had his nature, you'll be able to create it on your own. And that is the significance of why God needed the children to be exiled. So they'll have to go and they'll leave their father's house and have to go and make it on their own in that strange land, in that enemy land, in that land of opposition. So they have to do it the way God will do it against the fierce opposition. So that is why you see. Let's go deeper. If you go into Jacob's children, who was the blessed one, the blessing? Mind you, let me explain this briefly. The blessing is the ability to overcome the curse, and the curse is the inability to sustain the blessing. Keep that in mind. I'll make a video about the curse and the blessing later on. But for now, let that be. The blessing is not just about being blessed. It's about the ability to go from curse to blessed, to go from poor to rich, to be unstoppable, And the curse is to be unsustainable. Even when they give it to you on a platter of gold, you can't sustain it. That's why you see world leaders, like I was mentioning yesterday. They give them the titles, their character and their behavior and their abilities keeps exposing them to be thieves and charlatans. They are completely unworthy of the honor that is being given to them. Excellent, excellent what? This despicable shit. Worthless fools calling themselves leaders and kings. Don't know jack. Can't do jack. But don't worry, you keep deceiving. Let them keep deceiving themselves. Problems are coming that you will not be able to solve. And when those problems hit the people, they will wake up from their madness. At that point in time, your titles and your honors will not mean anything to them. The only thing they'll care about is solutions. And when you cannot produce those solutions, you will lose your position. And those who can actually solve the problem, they will return back to them. These things you are begging and committing abominations for, going about sucking things, because we're on YouTube, I don't want to censor the video, sucking things from your fellow men to get, begging, the meaning and humiliating yourselves to get the righteous. People will be begging them to take up the throne, begging them to take up the leadership positions. That thing that you defiled your whole family, sacrificed your children, sacrificed your morality, sacrificed your soul to get, and still only got a shadow version. People will be begging them to receive the real version. And you see your stupidity. How smart you are. You could not endure 70 years of difficulty. So you said, no, instead of me to suffer for 70 years, I would rather suffer for infinity. And you are teaching people how to invest. You are teaching people how to delay gratification. You that chose 70 years of pleasure over infinity of pleasure. Because if you have suffered here for the 70 years that you virtually have to live, 70 to 100, you have inherited eternity of ever-increasing glory, ever-increasing pleasure, ever-increasing power, ever-increasing authority. That thing that you so desperately want. But now you are going to inherit ever-increasing shame, just as we're doing with someone that is infinitely greater than you, Jesus. He's not even greater than you, but on your level of understanding, because you don't know anything. You are actually a greater deceiver than him, but you don't even know that. As you are listening to this, you think he's more deceptive than you. You are actually more deceptive than him. But we'll get there. That's why you don't know jack. And you call yourselves light and enlightened, the Illuminati. You're about to teach me that light. You're about to show it. The great gods of the earth, the determiners, the raiser of men, and the casting down. Anybody who does not support your ideologies, they lose their jobs, they lose everything. You change the story on your news media and say whatever you want to say, and take their words out of context, take the story out of context. No problem. You're about to show us that power. Please, I want all of you to gather very, very harshly, very, very strongly, and bring me down, and bring the righteous down now. I want to see it. You have been dealing with Christians. You have been dealing with clowns. You're about to face the actual righteous. I want to see what you will do. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to be impressed. I'm so afraid. So afraid. What they will do. These great men. On to better things. So we're talking about, I don't know why this thing doesn't want to come up. The Abraham's promise, many nations, and the slavery. I told you, and so they have to go out so they can get it on their own. So that's why you see someone like Jacob, among Jacob's children, Joseph was the chosen one. Joseph had the blessing, had the ability to overcome the curse. So when God told him that you're going to be a king, what did it happen? He made him a slave. But you can see the significant part is that he was a slave in a foreign land, in a foreign place, out of his parents' house. So he didn't take anything from Jacob. And then he went there, and on his own he produces by himself. So that's the DNA of God, the ability to create from scratch on your own in spite of opposition. That is the unstoppability. That's why God is eternal, and all his children need to be eternal. That's why when I give you examples of actual righteous men, of actual Christians, I only use Joseph and Daniel. A lot of these other people are just clowns. They have the Jesus anatomy of the spectacles and the miracles. These are the few ones that have the actual DNA of God, the overcoming spirit that cannot be stopped. If the whole world come together, only one. We don't need any prayer team. Every single individual will overcome every single obstacle that is put against him. Each one of God's children. They that are born of God overcometh the world. Not one person. not their village priest. The world, the whole world put together cannot stop one righteous man. I'm about to show you examples of what righteousness is. So please gather your forces. Don't spare. Sir, there will be no confusion. I want you to, everything you can possibly do, please do it. Everything you can possibly manipulate, do it. If you can edit this video and post it on the media and misrepresent it, please do it. Everything you can possibly do, I want you to do it. When you are finished doing it, then I'll start. Clowns, greats, excellencies, dignitaries. How do they call the lawyers? My learned colleagues. So learned, so enlightened, Illuminati. That's why you're eating shit and having intercourse with shit. Putting your penis inside shit. Then you come out and lick it. Are you not mad? Eating shit. That is nobility. Those are excellencies. Okay. And teaching people to eat shit and sanctioning eating shit and punishing people for not eating shit. That's what makes you excellent. Okay, I'm learning the stupidity of God and the wonderfulness of this Illuminati, these greats. So, Abraham. So, the God DNA is that ability to go to the foreign land, and that's why he needed them to go to the foreign land. They can't inherit it from him. The moment they inherit from him, it means they are not his children. They do not have his DNA. They do not have his abilities. They do not have his nature. So by Isaac staying in the house, he thought he was inheriting God. He was actually showing that he is the one that is not a child of God. He is the actual bastard. The way in the New Testament they said the other children, Ishmael is the bastard. No, it is actually Isaac that is the bastard. And even from physical, technical terms, Ishmael is not a bastard because Hagar was married to Abraham. He took her as a wife. You can go and read it. He took her as a wife. She was not a concubine. But you can see the injustice because Jacob's wives, that I think 6 of Jacob's children are actually given birth to by concubines, but they were accepted into the fold as the 12 tribes, one of the 12 tribes. But these ones are actually wives. They are disqualified. So it was just pure injustice that God allowed. For, like I said, for the purpose to expose this wickedness. So if Jesus can permit concubines inside his own kingdom, so he can profit him, so he can claim, so he can form his nation, the 12 tribes of the Israel, so he can form his nation, then why is he condemning wives from Abraham's side, where it adversely affects him? You can see how the law is always ever bending. Okay, yes, let me now discuss that second issue about when I was talking about the righteous judges and spectacles. It is the example of David, how they are not righteous judges. You see, David, when they brought in that issue of him sleeping with when they brought in the story of him sleeping with what was her name, Bathsheba, and killing Bathsheba's husband. When they presented the story to him, it was just a man that took somebody's goat, because it was only one goat. I can't remember the animal, was it a sheep or something? But he took one person's sheep. So he took the sheep, and then David was so angry, said the man will pay 4 times and still be killed. The law only says that you should pay 4 times. If you steal, you should pay 4 times. That for a significant elimination of disobedience. So basically, you pay until you'll be punished for that sin until you let go of the sin, until you vow to stop doing it. That was significant. The 4 times was significant of. So you're supposed to just pay 4 times. Well, physically, they'll just pay 4 times. You didn't understand that was the meaning of these things. It is for us in this generation. So you're supposed to just pay 4 times. But when you thought it was somebody else, say the person will pay 4 times and be killed. Then when you discover that it was him, and his own crime is actually more severe, because that's just a goat. He took somebody's wife, and the person just stole the goat. They didn't say he killed the owner of the goat. He took somebody's wife and killed the owner of the wife. He killed the husband. Then when it came to so that it was the punishment was going to be on him, he started asking for mercy. He didn't talk about paying back 4 times. He never even returned Bathsheba. He didn't talk about paying 4 times. He didn't even talk about punishment again. Something that you wanted somebody to be killed on account of a goat. You should not even be punished on account of murder. Because he killed Uriah. He didn't just kill Uriah, a man. He killed a righteous man that was diligently serving him. A man that had the opportunity to go back home and have sex with his wife and enjoy himself. He said, no, the armies of Israel cannot be at war. I'll sit down here and be enjoying my wife. So he slept on the palace steps. I can't remember. He slept somewhere else. That's how faithful, that's how righteous a man was. You killed a righteous man, you should not be killed. Then you want someone else to be killed because he killed a goat. Then you committed murder, but should not be punished. They can see the unrighteous judgment. That is why the spectacles. So, of course, with these spectacles, he killed Goliath. Spectacular things. Whoa, 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 whoa. But when it came to judgment and administration, you can see how unrighteous he was, how unfair he was. So, it's not a matter of the Bathsheba, it's a matter of the judgment, the unjust judgment. A person that committed a less crime, you give him a high punishment. And you that committed a high crime, you give yourself virtually no punishment. Even when God killed the child that was born from the affair, he was crying as if God had done him one great evil. Then God allowed the child to die. So God's promise, the God's DNA is that you have to live and go and do it on your own so that you can be like him that created from scratch. Just like I said about Sam, one of Cyrene, the father of the light and the darkness. So you have to create it from scratch. We'll not go there. Things about that, but I will not go into it. It takes time. So you have to create it from scratch. So that's why you see, even among Isaac's children, Jacob and Esau, who was the one that was blessed is Jacob. What happened to Jacob? He had to leave the house. He had to go and serve Laban. And then what happened? Without anything from Isaac, he just left the house with a staff. He came back with great riches. You have to understand, in the Bible, because of their lower level, that was the baby stages, it made it look as if the treasure they were actually coming out was the riches. But actually, the real treasure they were coming out with is the ability. You see, when you're a slave, they cut you no slack. They cut you no slack. I was supposed to make this in a different video. Yes, let's make it a different video. This video will get too long. I'll make the next video about, let me see what I'll title it. I titled it somewhere. I'd spoken about it. Okay, the eternalization process. The eternalization process, the God's DNA. How God creates eternity, how God eternalizes people or things. So that will be the next video. That will be tomorrow. So I'll talk about that more. But so they had to leave the house. So Isaac never left the house, which means he does not have he does not have Abraham's DNA. He's not Abraham's child, because it says, "Know of a surety." I told you in Genesis 15, verse 13 to 14. Know of a surety, your descendants will be strangers, will be slaves in a foreign land. Then after they have served, they will come out with great spoil. Isaac was never never expelled to a foreign land. Esau too, that was not the one that God loved, was never enslaved in a foreign land. Jacob, that God loved, was enslaved. Joseph was enslaved. Ishmael and the brothers, they had to go on their own and fend for themselves. So you can see he never left the house. Because he never left the house. They had to leave their father's house, but they never left the house. So he's not Abraham's son. He does not have Abraham's DNA. He's Abraham's son physically, but not Abraham's son spiritually, because they do not have the same abilities. They do not have the same nature. So that is one. And then it's supposed to be something else, but my spirit says that is enough. So that is enough. I am Funom Zock-Sock, and this is God's side of the story. I dare you to prove it wrong.